The night began like any other AGT audition night. The audience buzzing with excitement, families cheering for their loved ones, judges preparing for another lineup of performers, and the cameras sweeping across the room to capture every moment. But something in the air felt different, almost like the room was waiting for a story that hadn't been told yet, a voice that hadn't been heard yet, and a moment that would stay in everyone's heart long after the lights faded. And as the stage manager whispered, "Next contestant," no one imagined that a small girl from the Philippines was about to change everything. Backstage, the young girl stood quietly, her hands nervously gripping the microphone, her clothes simple, her shoes worn. And yet her eyes carried a kind of strength that only comes from surviving. Hardship, her voice barely above a whisper, as she practiced the first line of the song she chose. And beside her stood an older woman, her mother, who tried her best to smile, while fighting back tears of hope and worry. Because this moment wasn't just about singing. It was about survival. It was about dreams. And it was about proving that even the poorest hearts can carry the richest voices. She had traveled from a small province in the Philippines, a place where music was more than entertainment. It was comfort, it was healing. And it was the one thing her family held on to when life grew difficult. And every evening, she would sit outside their tiny wooden home, singing into the wind while neighbors stopped to listen. Not because she was loud or trying to be seen, but because her voice carried a kind of soul that people didn't expect from a child, a soul that held stories of struggle, stories of faith, and stories of a girl who dreamed beyond the boundaries of poverty. The producers called her name, and she stepped forward slowly, her feet almost trembling. Yet with every step she took, it felt like she was walking toward fate, toward something that had been waiting for her all her life. And as she walked onto the massive AGT stage, the lights hit her gently. The judges looked up with curiosity, and for a moment the room fell into a quiet silence. The kind of silence that comes before something powerful arrives. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his eyes studying the shy figure, standing in the center of the stage, and he asked her name, his voice softer than usual. The audience leaning in to hear her tiny voice, and when she spoke, her words carried innocence and humility. She introduced herself, said she was from the Philippines, said she came from a very small place and a very difficult life. And she said it not with sadness, but with pride, because every struggle she had survived shaped the strength in her voice. When asked what she would be singing, she said Hotel California. And the judges exchanged surprised looks, because it was not an easy song, not something usually attempted by someone so young. But she explained softly that it was her father's favorite song before he passed, and every time she sings it, she feels like he is still with her, watching her, guiding her. And in that second, the entire room seemed to hold its breath, because this performance was no longer just a performance. It was a message, it was a memory. It was a daughter singing to heaven. The music began soft and slow, the iconic guitar intro filling the theater, and she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the first note rise gently into the air, her voice trembling at first, then smoothing into something warm, something heartbreaking, something incredibly pure. And the judges' expressions changed instantly, shock appearing in their eyes as they realized they were not listening to just a talented girl. They were listening to a rare soul, a natural storyteller. Someone who didn't just sing the song, but lived each line of it with every breath. As she moved into the first verse, her voice gliding effortlessly over the melody, the audience leaned forward, unable to look away, her tone haunting yet beautiful, her control astonishing. And as she reached the chorus, something extraordinary happened. Her voice expanded with emotion, as though she was pouring her entire life, her pain and her love into the song. And the room filled with an energy that no one could describe, something that made people's eyes well with tears, even before they realized they were crying. Simon covered his mouth, stunned, unable to believe what he was witnessing. Heidi whispered, "Oh, my God." Sophia placed her hand on her heart as tears formed, and Howie shook his head in disbelief. Each of them moved in their own way, because this wasn't just an audition. It was a moment of pure truth, a reminder of why shows like this exist. To find the unexpected, to find beauty where the world often forgets to look, and to witness the kind of gift that can only be born from struggle. Her voice rose stronger as the second verse began, each word ringing with sincerity, each note flawlessly delivered, yet effortlessly natural, and her small frame shook slightly with emotion as memories of her father flooded through her. Her mother backstage covering her face with her hands as tears streamed down, whispering prayers of gratitude, because she knew that this wasn't luck, this wasn't chance, this was destiny unfolding right before her eyes. The audience sat frozen, every person captivated, every heartbeat tuned to her voice. And even though she stood alone on stage, she filled the entire space with her presence, as if the room belonged to her, as if every light, every eye, and every ear existed solely to witness her song. And the deeper she went into the performance, the stronger the connection became. The air thick with emotion, the atmosphere electric yet gentle, and people began wiping tears quietly, not wanting to make noise that might interrupt her magic. By the time she reached the bridge, her voice soared, with a power no one expected from someone so small, a power shaped not by fancy training or wealthy upbringing, but by life itself, by nights spent singing to forget hunger, by mornings filled with hope despite having nothing, by the simple yet powerful dream of giving her family a better life. And every ounce of that journey echoed through her voice, pulling the audience deeper and deeper into her story. Then came the final chorus, the moment where everything inside her erupted into one breathtaking wave of sound, her voice trembling with passion, rising and falling like a storm, yet staying perfectly controlled, perfectly true, perfectly her. And the audience stood up instinctively, unable to remain seated, cheering through their tears, as she poured her entire heart into the final notes, her voice shimmering across the theater like a blessing. When the song ended, the room exploded into applause, cheers echoing from every corner, the judges rising to their feet, Simon wiping his eyes discreetly, Sophia openly crying, Heidi placing a hand over her mouth in awe, and Howie smiling with pure admiration. And for a moment the girl simply stood there, overwhelmed, her eyes watering, her hands shaking the magnitude of the moment, settling over her like a warm embrace. Simon was the first to speak, his voice cracking slightly, as he said he had never in all his years on the show heard a version of that song, sung with such emotional depth, such honesty and such meaning. And he told her that her voice was a gift to the world, a reminder of the power of music, and a symbol of hope for every child who dreams, despite hardship. And as he spoke, the audience cheered louder, agreeing with every word. Heidi told her she was an angel, that her voice carried a kind of purity that was rare and unforgettable, the type of voice that touches the soul rather than just the ear. And Sophia told her that she didn't just sing the song. She felt it, lived it, and made everyone else feel it too. And how he said that she was a miracle, a living example of how talent can come from anywhere, from any situation, from any background. Then Simon stood up, looking directly at her, his eyes filled with emotion. And he said that sometimes a performance comes along that is not just good, not just incredible, but life-changing. And this, he said, was one of those moments. And without waiting another second, he reached forward and slammed his hand onto the golden buzzer, sending a burst of golden confetti raining from above. As the audience screamed with joy, the girl gasped, her hands covering her face as tears streamed freely, her mother running onto the stage. As the confetti swirled around them like falling stars, the two of them embracing tightly, crying into each other's shoulders, overcome with gratitude, relief, and disbelief. And the judges watched with admiration, knowing they had just witnessed something that would live forever in the history of AGT. The golden lights bathed her in warmth, reflecting in her eyes like tiny suns, her dreams unfolding right before her. And her mother whispered, "Your father is watching. He is proud of you." And the girl sobbed harder, her small voice trembling as she whispered back, "I did it for him." And the entire theater felt the weight of that moment, the beauty of that love, the power of that performance. As she walked off the stage, still trembling, still crying softly, still covered in golden sparkles. She looked back at the audience one last time, and for the first time that night, she smiled fully, a smile filled with hope, gratitude, and a new belief in herself, a belief she had never been allowed to feel before. And the room erupted into cheers once more, celebrating her courage, her talent, and her heart. And so her journey began not just as a contestant, not just as a singer, but as a symbol of hope. A reminder to the world that greatness can come from the most unexpected places, that poverty cannot silence true talent, that dreams can rise even from the humblest beginnings, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest miracles.